Good morning. How is everybody? Welcome to a brand new semester in the spring of 2021. Doesn't quite look like spring just yet with the snow on the eastern seaboard. And in the world we're living in today, sometimes I'm not sure whether it's 2021 or 1984. Yeah? So this is the first video you should watch for this course. And this video deals with one very, very, very important thing. The nuts and bolts of the course, right? The nuts and bolts of the course. And what I mean by the nuts and bolts is all the business end stuff of the format, the structure of the course, and the different types of assignments you can expect week to week, right? So there's two really big domains that you need to grapple with in terms of being successful in this course. And it's not rocket science, and it's not going to be really any different than any other online course in that sense. Number one, you do the work well, and you keep up with the material. And I really think, and as my own experience as a student and as a professor watching other students, that success in a course comes from staying up with the material, staying on top of it so things don't pile up, so you're not turning in things late, and so on. And it keeps your head in the game, and you get a success, and you build on it. And you feel good, and when you feel good, you keep going. When you don't feel good, everybody does the same thing. You slow down, you stop, you give up if it gets to that point, and so on and so forth. So number one, keeping up with the work. Number two is understanding the nuts and bolts of the course. Understanding what's going to be expected of you from week to week, because it's basically going to be the same thing, the same format, different materials, right? And then just understanding how to navigate Blackboard and understanding how I've presented it, right? I'm sure the way I present it could be better, because any course I've ever taken on Blackboard, I always hate the way it's laid out. And every semester I kind of tweak it a little bit to make it better. But once you get familiar with the way I present things, that will be enough to say, oh, now I go here. Now I know this is going to be due because this every week stuff is due at this time, and the new material goes up at this time, and it's the same with new material, new questions, new readings, and so on and so forth, new lectures, right? So in this lecture, what I want to jump into is the nuts and the bolts. I want to jump into just a very quick overview of the theme of the course, but I want to pick that up really in another video that really can delve more deeply into the theme of the course of friendship or frenemies. This is a course that I've developed that I'm excited about. I am excited about the readings. I'm passionate about the readings. And there's a lot of interesting things to talk about, important things. And one of the reasons I chose this course in the substance matter is because I think it's relevant to students. And I also think it's relevant in a way in that it addresses issues that are about their lives, about their real world experiences. And yet they're not necessarily things that are talked about in an academic setting or with other professors about these kinds of things, with the kind of the rigor of some of the readings we're going to have, and to see how they're not just academic exercise, but they're relevant to your lives and your interactions with other people. So a little bit of the theme. Then I want to look over the syllabus and the expectations of the course very clearly. In the first week here, your goal is to get familiar with the expectations and the structure of the course. There's going to be some little assignments, but the real priority, in some way, is in the main sense, is to get familiar with what is demanded of you and the format that is presented, so that you can just kind of internalize it and make it second nature. Then what I'm going to do, the third thing, is look at the Blackboard format, and I'm just going to show you Blackboard, and I'm going to go through it. It's simple, 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 and that's my goal. So we're going to look at the theme of the course, we're going to look at the expectations on the syllabus, and we're going to look at the Blackboard format so you know what's going on. This course is an LEH course. It's a general education or a liberal arts course, which you might spend some more time talking about later. The topic is frenemies. These people who are somewhere between friends and somewhere between enemies, and they occupy a very interesting position. And it turns out that in many ways, almost anyone you know, how falls in this category. There are some different meanings of this word. I would say it was a more topical word maybe a decade ago, but people know this word still. And it has a specific meaning, normally of like that person that you're superficially acquainted with, or maybe a little more than superficially, and you carry on what appears to be a friendly relationship. You're acquainted at work, at school, what have you, and yet it turns out like there's a certain tension between you that you don't acknowledge, or that there's a certain competition going on. And a frenemy kind of falls into that category. And normally when we think of our best friends, we don't think of people who are frenemies. But the other thing to consider is that with any relationship, friendship connotes a certain type of harmonious interaction with others, harmony with others, rather than conflict. And of course, we immediately realize that our relationships with ourselves, because that's going to count too in this course, and also with everybody else, is always some mixture of harmony and conflict, friendship and enmity, hence frenemies. So first really important thing here. I'm going to post announcements for a period of time, but ultimately all announcement type information is going to be sent out via this email right here, grouchoM1977@gmail.com. This is going to be the email I'm going to communicate with you all about any type of change or reminder or any personal issue. You email me individually, but I'll be sending out both group messages and then also individual messages to anyone who contacts me with a question or some such. Let me also be clear. My goal in sending out group emails is that 99.99% of the time, a group email is a reminder to you about something that you already know that you need to do, right? Which is to say, I have the weekly assignment folders set up on Blackboard that explain what you need to do for that week, right? And I will be very generous at times, but not always, because it's your responsibility to keep up with things. I will send out friendly reminders about X, Y, Z, ABC, and so on and so forth. And I hope that most of the time what I'm sending out is really just a reiteration and a recapitulation of stuff that I've already presented you. Occasionally, I'm going to be calling an audible where I will change something, right? And I hope to do that as little as possible because that confuses people, right? An audible, everybody, of course, knows the game of football, American football, a great sport. The league has some problems, but the sport itself is a great sport. And an audible is when the quarterback gets up to the offense and they're about to run the play, and they look at the defense and they go, oh my God, if I run that play, we're screwed. So what does he do? He changes the play at the line of scrimmage and accommodates for the situation, and they get a good play run against. They get the right play against the defense, so they can be successful rather than not, right? So sometimes I'll call an audible. But the key thing is this is how we're going to communicate. And what you're going to do, as I've already indicated, is you're going to send me an email to this address in the subject line with your name, LEH353, and your class section. This video is for two sections. One of them is A12 and one of them is A17. And since we don't have class times, we have to use the section, which I don't like because who remembers the section number? I never do. It's normally irrelevant, but here it becomes important. Let me also just say that this is an asynchronous online course. Asynchronous means at the same time. Asynchronous means not at the same time, right? So a synchronous course is one that's primarily run through live instruction in a Zoom chat, right? So asynchronous means I post materials and you access it when you can, at your own time, right? So we are going to periodically have in-person meetings, despite the fact that the meat of the course is asynchronous, right? To be done at your own time, on your own time. But every now and then we will have class times, and they will be particularly important early in the semester because it is always the case both for a professor and a student that a course works well when people get off to a good start. And I think the best way to get off to a good start under these circumstances is to have some in-class meetings And then I haven't made a perfect decision about it, but periodically we will have in-class decisions, in-class meetings going forward. So that's one thing that I'll have to call an audible about. And obviously, since it's an online course, one of the great challenges is just getting comfortable with the course online, because you don't have that in-person interaction, or at least not nearly as much. Okay, so let's move forward. Alrighty, so what did I say we're going to talk about today? The substance and expectations of the course, the format of the course, in terms of the nature of assignments, and navigating Blackboard, right? So I want to very briefly just talk about friendship, frenemies, the why and the what question. The why and the what question. So who cares? I never liked professors who started a semester and just assumed that their topic of expertise was important. And I never liked it when they assumed we all knew what the nature of the topic really was and what it really meant. Even the most basic things, you say, like, what is physics? What is chemistry? What is English class? What is literature class? Actually, there are very well-developed specific answers to these things as to why this is a discipline here in this way, and this is a discipline here in this way. And professors, I found in my own experience, that rarely did they give an explanation of what it was all about and why. So I think it's really important. So one of the reasons I developed this course was to be both substantive but also relevant to you. And I think this issue of our lives online, we live virtual lives. Here we are in an online course, and we're trying the best to make it real, right? I just listened to a Catholic priest who's like in the hierarchy of, the Vatican hierarchy. And here he's saying our lives that we live online are literally meaningless. Like, literally nothing. What only matters is the real in-person interactions you had. And he made this really hilarious, something sad but ironic and observation. He said, since my sermons or my homilies are streamed, live streamed, when I give them, I don't have people showing up in person. Because what do? Well, I'm at home. I'm in my PJs. I flick on my computer and I watch it there, right? And they don't show up in person. The internet is a tool. Tools can be good, can be bad. They can be okay, they can be evil. They can be however they're used by the users, right? So social media, message boards, chat rooms, it's hard. My life, I have come to these things having not grown up with them, right? We had a telephone that was plugged into the wall, right, with a cord that you strangled yourself on, or the cat got caught in, or the dog, right? Or got wrapped around the refrigerator door when it was open or some such. And we had a computer at home, but it was like a novelty. And it was used for maybe a couple video games and then later word processing. And that was it. There was no internet. At least not for us and not in my family. It would have been unusual in the 80s to have internet. There were people who had it, but I mean, unusual. Modem connections. So, but I'm in my 40s now, and in the last maybe 10 years, and longer than that, but I mean, I've really started to explore the social media aspect of the internet. And I have to say, it's incredible. You can connect with people on the other side of the world like they're right next to you, right? It's amazing. People in Iran, people in China, people anywhere. Anywhere. If they can get access to the internet, they're right next to you. On the other hand, they're not right next to you. Facebook, we've kind of all seen what it is now, right? It's a lot of social thought control. It's a lot of data mining. The reason your profile is free is because they mine your data and they sell it and they keep track of it and they learn things about you that you can't learn about yourself by analyzing that data in a mass form, right? What you think you're doing is unique turns out to be very common to them, and they see patterns that you wouldn't necessarily. Facebook is also kind of fake fame. We all have a kind of awareness meme of internet fame, or your video goes viral and all that mumbo jumbo. I was in teaching an art class, and a professor came up to me that had the same students as I did, and he said, all these students, or at least a big chunk of them, they wanted to be famous on the internet, and many of them thought they had become famous because they had some viral videos. And I don't doubt that those people had tapped into something if they had some kind of viral video. But if you've ever experienced any kind of notoriety on the internet, you also know that it can disappear as quickly as it appears, and it's like it never happened once it's over. So as much as we're close to people on the other side of the globe, we're also very distant from them, and we don't live with them. We don't have to clean up after them. We don't have to see them clipping their toenails. You name it, real world stuff. We don't see any of that of these people, and all they are is a thing about Facebook, something that they've crafted on their computer, something that is it is an image rather than a reality. Now, there's nothing wrong with presenting an image. That's what human beings do for a lot of different reasons, good and bad. It's one thing we're going to talk about. We're going to see it in The Money, the story we're going to read this week. And but of course, the image is not the reality. We're savvy to a point about the nature in which things are images and not reality, a depiction of the reality or a representation of the reality. But we can't always figure out what is the representational part and what is the real part. Sometimes you know it's not all true that they're having a great time every single Saturday night, or that if it looks like they're having a great time on Saturday night, well, what about the 7 days or 6 days in between the two Saturday nights? And what about the hour later where they're drunk and throwing up in the bathroom or something? The real them after that night of having a good time that they post, right? So the internet is both radically informative if used in the right way, but it also is incredibly isolating. And this COVID-19, COVID-1984 world that we're living in, it has put us even more in our cubicles, in our silos, in our isolated chambers in front of our computers, physically apart from people. At least in a lot of circumstances, not altogether. So this is one of the issues, this internet world we live in and all the devices and stuff like that. Why else? Because friendship is part of our human nature and our psychology. Human nature just means like mind and body, or body and soul. We have a physical part and we have a psychological part. So psychology is just referring to that psychological part of human nature, that immaterial part of our thinking and our feeling and our speaking, that can't be tied down, our spirit, that can't be so tied down perfectly to physical, the world, and not explained very well by, say, natural science, material science, and so on and so forth. We need words to talk about it, not numbers. And sentences and books and poetry and not equations. I have tremendous respect for science, mathematics, and all these things. The thing is, natural science in the 17th through the 19th century really believed, and into the 20th, and there's still people who believe it today, but it's ebbed somewhat. It was really a belief that every phenomena in the world could be explained with essentially a mathematical equation. Galileo said the book of the world is written in numbers, right? Think about that to a Christian who says, no, the book of the world is written in the word of God, in language, human language, not numbers, right? Which is to say there's a whole level of meaning and also a certain amount of indeterminacy that comes through language that can never be communicated through numbers, which do what? They quantify things, right? And human language can quantify, but it also can describe qualities, and it just has really an infinite range of expression that numbers do not, right? So that's a fascinating, the psychological realm is not understood by numbers. I don't doubt that you can understand a tremendous amount about us through analyzing our physical makeup. Absolutely you can. But there's an element that can't be fully understood, at least not in that way. right? What is it? Friendship is a central component of human happiness, and perhaps the most central one for some people. Obviously, happiness, we're going to read Aristotle. Aristotle sees happiness as the goal of all human beings. Not a radical claim, right? But it's important to keep in mind for Aristotle and for us in our course that human nature, we all want to be happy because of our nature. And because we have a human nature, rather than the nature of some other type of animal or other type of thing, our conception, our drive toward happiness, our how we understand or feel about happiness is different from, say, a horse or a dog, right? And one thing it's going to involve is our social interactions with other people. Because, of course, we're social and political animals, meaning we're not autonomous. We need other people. We're not self-sufficient. We need other people. And, of course, we both need and want other people. And those two things are not exactly the same. If I'm on a ship in the middle of the ocean with one other person, I need that person to stay alive. If I'm living in a city where I'm making good money and I've got all kinds of stuff, I don't need that person specifically. I maybe want to go to the cafe and have a coffee with them or get a beer or what have you, right? So happiness, if social relationships are central, we also acknowledge that we're social animals by nature. We want and need other people. So frenemies. So if you think about friendship as a state of a special type of harmony with another person, enmity, or being in a state of enemies with one another, or hatred, if you will, is a state, obviously, of disharmony and conflict, right? And we see that really every relationship we have is some combination of the two, right? So the interesting thing here is so-called asocial behavior, showing enmity toward others, showing hatred toward others, being in competition with others. We have to own up to this. This is actually social behavior. And we might say it all stems from one thing, this issue of our desire to be recognized, or the theme or issue of recognition. Recognition means I want to be seen and respected by others. I want my worth acknowledged by others. And myself. That's a relationship with ourself is something that Aristotle is going to talk about. Right? I want to be respected for my work. I want to be respected for my looks. I want to be respected for my identity, however we define ourselves. I want to be respected because I'm a decent person. I want to be respected because I'm smart. I want to be respected because I got money, got the car, got this. I want my props, right? All these things, right? And respect and recognition can result in harmony. And the desire for recognition can also result in conflict when the other person is not giving you the type of recognition that you want. And you're not going to stop until you get it, right? So a lot of conflictual behavior is born out of a desire for recognition. And conflictual behavior with others is also social because recognition necessarily involves the other person. We need the other person to acknowledge, you could say, our existence. Think about people being in love. Oh, he doesn't love me. He's got to love me. He's got to see me. We go to class and it's like I'm invisible to him, or some such, right? You want to be seen, not by yourself, but by others, right? Okay. So that gives us actually more of an overview that I expected to talk about. So let's move on to some nuts and bolts. Okay, so here we have the syllabus. We've got some important quotes here. And this introduction here is really a thematic introduction. It gives an overview to some of the key issues that I've already touched on with the theme of friendship. So I want to move on to the business end of the syllabus, right? The expectations and objectives, learning objectives, and so on. So first, this course is going to consist of lecturing, reading, writing, and some amount of class discussion, whether that comes through the reading response discussion board or whether it comes through the times where we actually meet in person. Students will develop skills of reading, writing, and interpretation. This first week, we're really going to hammer this issue of reading and interpretation. There's going to be some videos to watch, and there's going to be a little quiz dealing with some vocabulary terms that are central to reading and interpretation. We'll talk about those more as we get to them. Right? Next, to be conversant in the core theories of friendship. Right? So, Here's the issue. We're going to have an array of readings that take very different perspectives on relationships with human beings. Particularly, they're going to get into the issue of why is it this way? Why do people interact this way? Why do we need friendship? So a detailed analysis. And each author is going to present their own conception, their own framework of understanding. So we're not just going to read texts kind of will-o'-the-wisp. We're really going to try to tease out of them the overall framework, something that we can apply in the future. Now, on this note, I should just say some of the readings are going to be short stories and fiction, and some of the readings are going to be nonfiction. So this issue of establishing kind of a theoretical framework for looking at friendship, the primary source is going to be Aristotle in his Politics and his Ethics. His Ethics deals primarily with the theme of human happiness, and friendship sits at the heart of his explanation of human happiness. And once we see that kind of framework of ideas, we're going to be able to use those ideas going forward when we look at other texts. So next thing, there are 3 texts you absolutely need to purchase for this course. I will also post links for these texts. You must have 2 things. You must have these texts, full stop. Number 2, you must have these versions of these texts or you will not be able to follow along. 2 of them are translations, and therefore a different translation, it's like having a different book, right? Next thing, they're not expensive. $15, $10, and about $7, right? Much different. You buy an anthology, you spend like $100 or $80 on it. These are great books, and they're pretty cheap, right? Amazon. You buy them from Amazon. Very simple. Just make sure you've got the right editions. I will provide links in the future. So let me just run through it. It's Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. I'll call it his Ethics, Nicomachean Ethics. It's published by University of Chicago Press. That's key. And the translators are Bartlett and Collins. Plato's Symposium, translated by Alexander Nahamas. Right, he is the translator. It's Plato's text translated by Nahamas, and it's published by Hackett Publishing Company. And last, George Orwell's 1984, published by Signet Classics. All these books, these are very well-known books. They're published 1,000 different ways, but you need these versions of them. And I know there's some challenge. It's funny because the Signet book is a commonly published book that's updated, seems yearly, and for some reason when I search on Amazon, it's always hard to find, and I don't know why, but Amazon works in mysterious ways, as we all know. Okay, so let's move along here. This is an asynchronous class that will utilize Blackboard as primary, course infrastructure. And as I said, it's primarily asynchronous, but we will have meetings periodically that I will let you know about. So the first thing is, when we look at Blackboard, is you will have a weekly assignment module. On the left-hand menu of Blackboard, which we'll look at in a moment, it will say Assignments. Assignments. And Assignments is the primary place you go for your weekly assignment. Full stop. That's the place you're going to go for virtually everything. Virtually everything. What are weekly assignments going to consist of? Readings, reading response assignments, and supporting materials including videos, PowerPoints, and sometimes study guides. It's all just repeating what's here. Right? So the readings will either be in PDF form posted in the module itself or the folder, or they will be one of the books I have asked you to purchase. Straight up. There's no way you can miss what the reading is. It's always right there. I put it all with the assignment. Reading response assignments, what are they? And I'll look at the directions for them in just a moment. Reading response assignments are quite simple. They are questions about the text. Some are factual, as it says, and some are analytical. Factual means like, give me this relevant and important fact about the text. What is it? What does the text say about X, Y, or Z? Analytical means interpret it for me. Explain what it means. Explain why the author's saying it, some such, right? So factual, you've got to go and find it. Analytical, you've got to think and analyze what's being said and interpret it. And interpretation is something we're going to talk about early on here. So the reading response assignments will be found on the discussion board. The discussion board is where those questions will be presented. So posted in our week 1 assignment are reading response directions. Reading response directions. Read this. Go over this. Important. Simple, but important. Okay, so I explained the purpose of them. One of the basic purposes in reading response assignments is it guarantees that you've read each text. When I see you're capable of answering the questions, it shows to me that you've answered the text. Particularly, you've read the text. Particularly if we're meeting in person to talk about a text, right? So I've done all the lecture stuff in videos. So we're never going to meet for lecture. We're going to meet for conversation. We're going to meet for discussion about things, because this is one of the great things about this format is I can dump all the lecturing into videos. And in class time, 2 things. You can ask questions about what I've said in the lectures, and number 2, we'll spend our time talking about the text. Sometimes we'll draw specifically on the reading responses, and I'll read them out. And in general, all our discussion is going to revolve around things that were asked of you, right? So you always have to come prepared with these questions answered by the due date and / by when we meet in class, right? So a couple important things. For every reading, there'll be a reading response, and in some cases, there will be multiple reading responses for longer readings, which will be broken up over a period of time. There are 2 ways to navigate to your reading response. One, to click on the left-hand menu of the discussion board, or to click on the link that I've provided within the assignment. So I give you redundant, multiple ways to find the assignment. And once you know where it is, it's a no-brainer. Answering the questions. Number 1, you must answer in complete sentence, paragraph form, no bullets, no standalone vocab, no incomplete phrases, which are incomplete sentences. Full sentence form. Write properly. You're not necessarily being graded on the perfection of your writing, right? You're being graded on the substance of your answer and that it demonstrates you haven't just knocked this thing out. For each question, you must write at least 3 sentences. And the last part of the assignment is to comment on other people's answers. Not on, any particular thing they have to say. You write a handful of sentences responding to them. And it has to be something more than, oh, that's so cool, or I like that too. You really have to give some substantive response to what they're saying. And you can agree or disagree. I think that's appropriate as long as you want to maintain, for your own sake, you want to maintain your own level of politeness. And I don't see why people would be rude, but I think there's nothing wrong with disagreeing with someone, and that's often very important. In our society, we've got some problems with being able to disagree with people, which I'll talk about in another video. And obviously only what's appropriate. And you guys are all college students, so you know the boundaries anyway. Doesn't need to be said. So reading responses will be due every Sunday, the Sunday at the end of the week, or on the day that we read them in class when we have an in schedule. And the due date will be posted in each assignment module, right? So here's the thing. There's no turning in work late. But here's the thing. You get 2 freebie reading responses, meaning there's 2 you cannot do without any penalty. I don't want to say punishment. Penalty. However, if you do those, like if you do all the reading responses, then the 2 extra that you did will be extra credit. Last thing, the grading rubric, the thing we all want to know about. How do I grade this thing? First of all, it's out of 10 points. Second of all, what I'm looking for are some really basic stuff. I do not grade these with a fine-tooth comb. I look at them carefully enough. Number 1, answer all the questions and meet the expectations that I've given you in the instructions above. And in terms of the substance of the answer, what I'm looking at is that, number 1, it shows evidence that you've read the text carefully enough to answer the question, and that your answer really is pertinent to the question being asked and not just stuff about the book or the text but not really directly answering the question. You must answer the question directly, and that requires reading carefully enough to be able to do it. I'm not grading for spelling and grammar, but I will take points off if what you've written is just blatantly reckless. This is an easy grade. This is a low-hanging fruit type of grade. Like I said, I'm not grading with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure you comment on 2 other students. If you do these things, you get full credit, 10 out of 10. Simple as that. And the key thing is, the reading response as a low-hanging fruit is pretty much an easy grade. You do it, you invest what you need to invest to get it done, and you do that for the semester, and you have a good, strong foundation for your grade for the course. Right? There are other things that are, like the midterm and final exam, I'm going to grade much more carefully. So the reading response is kind of a no-brainer in terms of getting, basically you should be able to get 10 out of 10 without any problem, right? As long as you invest, the proper amount of time. Okay. So the reading responses are really your week-to-week assignments. There will also be quizzes and tests. The quizzes will be a fancy form of multiple choice, right? And I had problems with coming up with how can I give a live test on the internet and make it work. So let me start with the tests or the exam, midterm final exam. They're going to be essay questions, right? Where you have basically a take-home, what would be called in class a take-home exam with essay questions, where you have to produce a writing. And the quizzes are going to be challenging multiple choice questions, dealing with the material we've covered for a certain period of time. And the first quiz you're going to have is on vocabulary terms, dealing with reading and interpretation. Just a couple more things on the syllabus. Course requirements. If any of these requirements don't suit you, this class is not for you. And I say that in a really neutral way, beneficial to those people who don't feel comfortable about what I'm asking of them, right? Because if you're not comfortable, if you're not ready to do the work, you're not going to do well. And maybe there's another class that you'll do well. I think my class is pretty cut and dried, fair grader, obligation to be fair. So important things, keeping up with the schedule, showing up in person when we do show up in person. Grades are based on performance alone, not negotiation, not some scholarship you need, not some lone grade point average you need to meet or something. It's based on your performance and your performance alone, because that is what is fair to you, and it's what's fair to every other student, right? And that's the way professors should grade. It shouldn't be a matter of contention. Here are the types of assignments. I've talked about them. Here's the grade breakdown. I'm certainly not going to read all this with the personal issues, but I'm going to give you the gist of it. We're in this era of COVID. We're in this era of online. We're in this era of lockdowns. We're in this unprecedented time in which the unexpected tends to happen. I know that students are going to have personal issues, right? And when you have a real personal issue, I'm going to accommodate in a way that's appropriate and fair to your situation. Full stop. The thing that I ask is that when you know you've got an issue, please get in touch with me as soon as possible so that we can resolve how we're going to handle. And I'm talking about, someone like they're going to be out for a month because, I don't know, they just got evicted from their apartment or things of that order of magnitude. You miss one class, yes, you tell me, I'm sick, professor, and so on and so forth. Most of that is online most of the time, so that's not going to be an issue. But but keeping up with the work, if you have some personal issue, that's going to be a problem. And the biggest thing for me is you must contact me as soon as possible and do your best to be in regular contact with me. Because the big thing is when you have a life issue, then we have to say, okay, I want to work with you. And the question is, what do we have to do to solve this issue that works for you and for me? And there's always a solution that's fair. But the thing is, you've got to keep in touch with me. If someone gets in touch with me on the last day of class and they've done no reading response, stuff like this happens every now and then, and they say, oh my God, I've had catastrophe and so on. And I'm like, I don't want to assume that anybody's lying to me, and because it's just an awful thing to have to assume. But when someone doesn't contact me, and I've told them they must contact me, and they go the whole semester without contact, for example, when you miss a test, I'm going to email you, say, you didn't hand in this test. If you miss a reading response, I'm not going to be sitting there sending you personal reminders. But when tests are missed, that becomes a big deal. So I should say that exams and tests, you can only miss them for excused reasons, and you must provide evidence. So if you have a big personal issue, you must provide evidence, right? Really, really crucial. And once you do that, we'll get the issue worked out, right? And I'm spending time on this because every semester there's somebody who's got a real issue. And I know when people have issues, they get stressed about it, and they get sometimes afraid of talking to the professor. Maybe your grade's not going to be A++ at the end of the day because of your problem. But certainly I can do everything I can to put you in the best position for you to do as well as you can. Okay, so now let's very quickly look at the format of the course on Blackboard. Okay, so here we are. We're not getting the whole picture here because my window is a little bit smaller. Maybe I can just shrink this up a little bit. That might be better. Brilliant idea, Professor. Okay, there we go. So the first thing on Blackboard that everybody knows or should know is, I'll point this way because it's over here. The menu on the left side is really important, right? So here's our menu right here, right? And then this stuff. Forget about this stuff. And I've been trying, Lehman, each school has its own format for how they set up Blackboard, and then I have to go in there and make it simple and weed stuff out. So this is the stuff that really matters right in here. The first thing is course announcements. Here are the course announcements, right? And I've sent out a couple so far. And these go directly to whatever email you've given to Lehman. So for the time being, since I'm using the course announcements, you need to stay on top of them. Eventually, once I get all your emails and I plug them into my email address, I'm going to communicate through my Gmail account only, and I'm going to stop posting announcements because the announcements, such as they are going to be posted by my Gmail account. Course information and syllabus, well, guess what's there? The syllabus. So I'll just click on this for a second. Blackboard is always really fast. We all know that. So here it is. There's the syllabus I just looked at. And then permanent Zoom link. Whenever we meet, this is going to be the link we're going to use. And I think going forward, I'm not going to put this link all over the place. It's always going to be sitting here in the left-hand menu, the permanent Zoom link. And whenever we have a class and you say, well, Professor, we didn't get a link for the meeting. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? No, you had the link. It's right here. It's always here. The one thing stinky about this Zoom link is that it's listed as for the first class because I can't remove the date. All the Zoom, when you say create meeting on Zoom, it always wants to give a date to it. And I just want a generic meeting space. Essentially, it's like a permanent chat room for the class. That's the way I think of it. Okay, so we got that, and I've reiterated this. So then we go to assignments, and assignments is where it's all at. So this is my view. So these things, you see this is colorized, and this is in grayscale. So these are disabled for you, and I have some weeks there to fill in right now because I'm tweaking things. But you notice, Professor, what am I supposed to do this week? Well, there's an assignment, a weekly assignment folder that says, week 1, and these are the dates of the week, course introduction. So then I click on it, and I get my assignment module. And this format will probably change a little bit, but not dramatically, right? So a description of what we're going to cover that week, kind of like conceptual, topical stuff. Then the things we're going to tackle, the things we're going to do, learning objectives, some of which will change and many will stay the same, assignment materials, and then the assignment themselves. Now, assignment materials and assignment itself are a little bit, in a sense, redundant, but it helps to reinforce what you need to know. So the assignment materials are like all the different things from the text to the reading response to the video lecture to the PowerPoint lecture to a study guide if there was one, all the different components that go into the assignment which you need to have at your disposal to do the assignment. So then the assignment itself explains this is what you have to do with those materials, right? Complete the readings, watch the videos. So let me say I've got videos on the one hand and I've got PowerPoints on the other. So the videos recapitulate the slides from the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint recapitulates the videos. Sometimes there are some PowerPoints that I haven't talked about in the video. And so if you need to study, you have some combination of the PowerPoint where you can flip through very quickly or the video. And you have that at your disposal. Okay, so then I've given you a link to the reading response questions. What are you going to read this week? Mending Wall and the Money. Here are the reading response questions. You click on that. Here they are again. Here is the due date right here, Monday the 8th when we meet again, right? And what else? So reading response questions, that's your weekly assignment. There's also mention here of quiz 1. I've given you materials for quiz 1 in terms of the link for quiz 1 and the quiz itself. We'll get to it. And since it's not due until the 13th, in next week's assignment folder, I will have more clarified information on the quiz. It's a tiny quiz. It's a little vocabulary quiz. It's a little it's a kind of slam dunk quiz to get you off to a good start. It should be easy. So where are the reading response assignments? Either you can click on the link or you can just go to, where are we here? It's already scrolled down. You go to discussion board. So you click on discussion board and you get, this is the reading response for week 1. It says week 1, reading response, Mending Wall and the Money are 2 readings. And then how do you answer it? Well, you click on this. If you haven't used these, most people have used them. And then the key thing is click Create Thread. And Create Thread is creating your own thread to answer the questions. And I never understand why this is like this. You click on it, you go, oh my God, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. I don't know why it does that. So you scroll up and you go, there are the questions. They're right there. And here I give you the instructions, which is a kind of shorthand of the sheet that I presented earlier about the reading response instructions. For now, I think this is a good comprehensive start, and little nuts and bolts, things of that nature will be filled in as we go forward. You have questions, you ask me, and I will get back to you. Also, if I find, for example, that people are asking a kind of generic question that keeps coming up in my email, instead of responding to you individually, I will just respond as a group and say, oh, people mentioned X, Y, and Z. And so don't feel slighted when I just respond to the group. If you have some particular personal issue that's about you, then I will always be responding just to you, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And I look forward to getting the semester going, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you very much.